Hello and welcome to another edition of Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And today we begin the M group build, the brainchild of Steve Mottram of Mahdi Scale Models, Mahdi's Military Models. Anyway, I'll add a link down below. But anyway, this is the brainchild of Steve Mottram. He wanted to do a group build, and it's grown to huge proportions. Like he says in one of his videos, he was expecting, a handful of people, maybe a little more, and it's got into the hundreds. So there's going to be a lot of models being built, a lot of really good stuff. Vast range of subjects. So it should be a lot of fun. So anyway, as I mentioned in my last video, I did the review of this kit. It's the Academy M4A3 Sherman with T-34 rocket launcher, sometimes referred to as the Calliope, the rocket launcher part. So without a whole lot of blabbing, I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff laid out so I can actually let you know what I'm going to do and get started working on it. So let's take a look. Alrighty then, ready to get started. And there's a number of ways you can build a kit out of the box. You can just do it straight out of the box, going off of reference materials that are in the box. The color callouts, the decal positions, whatever. You can use it as a basis of a different vehicle, get aftermarket decals, whatever. Or, in this case, I'm going to build the exact vehicle that is shown on the box. On the internet there are, as you can see, photo references of this particular vehicle, and it looks like they took their artwork, they designed their artwork right off of the or really close to the photos that are available online. This particular vehicle is called, the nickname on it's called Cold Storage, and that's the markings that come with the kit, and that's the ones I'm going to do. So the only difference between what comes in the kit and what is shown on the instructions and the illustration and the actual photo is the actual photos. There is extra stowage, which I'm going to be doing. I will either scratch build some of the stuff, or maybe look for aftermarket, but it's real simple stuff like boxes, and there's a German helmet right here, and I have a better quality photo. I just had to print this off of a not very good printer because my printer's out of ink, but I'll have better photos in that for next time. But I need to do that, and I don't know if you can, how well you can see it in the on the camera here, but this shows the metal tracks. This one shows tracks with the rubber chevron blocks. So I'm going to look into getting some aftermarket tracks so I can replicate what's on here, because I want to build this as close to this as possible. On this one, it shows all of the wiring and electrical connections for the rockets going into an opening in the back, which was common on some of them. Some of them, they went through the radio, where the radio antenna went down in the vehicle, and they would add an extra radio on the side, or antenna on the side. On this one, it shows, or it appears to show, the electrical harness going through the there's a periscope on the top of the turret, which I will point out as I go along, but it shows going through there. So I'm going to do that instead of what's shown on this illustration. Other than that, it should be good. Now, one thing that I'm finding puzzling is the kit and some of the other references I've seen online of other people that have built the kit, and then line drawings and paint drawings of this vehicle. It shows the pressed steel wheels, which are these type of wheels right here. Yet on the front of the vehicle, it shows the spoked wheels. So I don't know if those were just thrown on there because they were available for extra armor protection, or if these are just because they're really dim. I'm gonna have to look at my better photo and see if it takes the spoked spoked or pressed wheels, or pressed steel wheels. Once I determine that, then I can figure it out. So I'm gonna run and take a look at that real quick and get back with you. Okay, so from what I can see online, these should be the steel wheels, and then the spoked wheels that are on the front in the photograph must have just, they were available, so they got thrown on the front of the vehicle. So I'm going to go with the steel, pressed steel, because that's what it shows in the instructions. It's what it shows on this illustration, and it's what appears to be on the actual photograph. So anyway, let's get started building this. The things you need to make sure you have ready: you need to have your cement, basic tools, knife, tweezers, cement, cutters, and it's probably a good idea to have your paints ready, or if you don't have them, at least know where you can get them so you'll have them when you need them. And during this build process, I'm going to show how and when I paint things, because I do things out of order sometimes, and I'll explain the reasoning for that. But anyway, the thing to do now is to get started on this, and it looks like we have two options. We have the opened, it's like cutouts on the drive sprocket, or solid, and it looks like solid is what was on the actual vehicle, so that's one I'll be using. Then I'll be assembling the wheels and the swing arm portion of the bogies, and then the bogie parts themselves with the vertical volute springs and return rollers, and then the track return skid plates. They just help give the track something to slide on as they go through the motion. So I'm going to cut some of these parts off and start cleaning them up and see what we got. Now I'm going to do one wheel. Let's do the sprocket first. Now sometimes I cut them really close, sometimes I cut them farther back and then clean them up after I get them off. So we have that part, which is 23, and then this part here, which is 19. And just so any of you watching this don't get bored, I'm not going to just sit here and assemble every little part. I'm just going to do some examples, then I'm going to shut it off and move on, and if there's anything to note, I will note it. So cut these parts off as closely as possible. Now this one, something to look for is once in a while you get manufacturers that glue stuff in some wonky spots, like right here inside of the curve of this wheel. That's kind of a weird place to do it, so you just got to cut it off as close as you can, and then use either a knife to smooth it out, or if you have a small sander that'll fit in there, a file, you can use that as well, but a knife seems to do it quite nicely. So I'm going to cut some of these parts off, get them cleaned up, and then come back. Okay, I'm going to pause right here to do a quick little notation on adhesives. And long ago, when I did one of my, beginners things, and I was talking about different cements and so forth, I talked a little bit about how I use different cements for different things, and this is a perfect example. This part here slides over that part there. Okay, you got a seam that you can see. There's a I'm going to call it a key and a keyway, or a tab and a notch, whatever you want to call it, so you can get it lined up properly, so the teeth are lined up so they'll fit the tracks like they're supposed to. Now in a case like this is where I would use something like Tamiya Extra Thin, Testors liquid cement, whatever. I like the thin because it's really thin and it sets really quick. This is a case where I would put the part together, and then apply the cement. Because the seam is exposed, you can utilize capillary action to get the cement to adhere the two parts together, and it works really quick and it's done. Now you want to be careful because if you get too much on the outside it can mar the plastic, but since this is the inside part it's not as crucial, so you don't have to be quite so careful. Okay, this however is a case where I'm going to use the Model Master liquid cement, which is just it's a little bit thicker than the extra thin. The extra thin dries super fast, so if I were to put some of the extra thin in here and then fumble around trying to line up the part, there's a possibility that the adhesive might evaporate before I can get the parts together. A lot of people do it that way and they're fine at it. Me, sometimes I just take too long putting it together. Again, there's a notch here and a little raised bump inside of here, so you know where to put the wheel. So you want to make sure you have it lined up when you assemble them. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and this has a nice extended tip on it, and apply cement on the inside edge right here where the two parts make contact. That way it takes this a little bit longer, and it's not crucial that it dry really fast, because once it's together it's not going to be fumbled around with and possibly fall apart. So I have a little bit of time to work, so I can make sure I have it lined up, and voila, this is the idler wheel, and that is done. So I'm going to do the same thing on the rest of the wheels and on the drive sprocket. These are the bogey wheels here. I'm going to do the same thing. Then once I do that, then I'll start cleaning up the seam, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I've got the drive sprockets, idler wheels, and the bogey wheels completed, the road wheels. So they're all glued together. And now all I have to do is get rid of this seam that's running down the middle of the tire there. So it's pretty simple actually. I am using these little skinny sanding sticks that I got at my local hobby store, and I'm basically just going around like this and sanding them down. They're light enough that they're sanding off really easily. And the nice thing is, sometimes you run into this on older kits, that the one side of the seam line compared to the other might be a little shifted a little bit, so it's really hard to clean them up. These are real easy. So there's what it looks like. There's the seam, and there's what it looks like cleaned up for the most part. So I'm just going to go through and give all those a quick sand down, and I'm rotating it slightly as I go to keep it round, because I don't want to end up with any weird flat spots. And I'll go around like that and get all these cleaned up, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, I have all the wheels, drive sprockets, idlers assembled, and the seams cleaned up. So I'm going to set these aside while I cut out all of the bogey assembly parts. I'll get some of those cut off and start assembling them. First we've got A21 and 22. So I'll cut one of each off. Okay, the cleanup shouldn't be too bad. Clip the little screw gates off as close as I can without damaging the part. Then I am going to use the edge of my knife, scrape the seam off. And watch for stuff like this, because right here is another bit of sprue that needs to be cut off, and it almost looks like it's supposed to be there, but it's not. So make sure you pay attention to stuff like that. Okay, so I'm going to get some of those cleaned up, and then I will also with the spring portion, and the return roller. And I will, then we have some other parts here. So let me get these cleaned up, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, here's the first bogie assembly completed. And it's evident after putting this together that the components, the sprues, come from different kits, and I'll show you why in just a second. But as you can see, they go together fine and it looks good. The only thing I will be doing, in addition to what I've done as far as assembling it, is whenever I actually attach it to the hull, I'll be attaching it to the hull before I paint, and once I have them all installed, I will be setting them, you know, on a flat surface, and I will be cementing these in place where they don't pivot, because I don't want them to I don't want them to do this, because once the tracks are installed, especially in the front and the back, it could pull the bogie out of whack. I don't want it to look like it's working suspension. But as far as the way the thing goes together and why it's evident that it comes from two different kits, is the wheels fit fine. This all fits together as it should. Okay. Squeeze together, it works, you know, it's fine. Here's where it gets tricky, is this pin here, or it goes through the arms here. It's like, it's really tight, okay, and it takes a lot of work to get it through, and kind of got to be careful because it could break. So what I ended up having to do is I took this drill bit, and the drill bit size is 5/64, and I inserted it through both sides, and basically I just spun it around like that, a little bit of a wiggling motion, and it was enough to bore it out to where this fits through and swivels a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get it together. So, and that's important because when the next component, which is the spring for the suspension, and I'll put it on here, the bottom here rests on this post, and the curves of that fit in there thusly. Now, as you can probably see, there is a gap there and there, and it does not fit together quite like it should. Now I test fit it on the sprue, this component that's on the same sprue as the springs, which obviously is an older kit, and it fit with no problems at all. This one, it kind of squeezes in there and it doesn't really fit like it's supposed to, because as you can see, this is raised up from here. So if you squeeze it down, then you get these gaps. So what I had to do on this side and on this side, using my hobby knife, I had to trim slightly right in here to where this part would fit flush. It's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of crucial to get all this to go together without a lot of hassle. Also, you have to be real careful about making sure that this channel right here that rests on top of this post is cleaned out and really smooth. Okay. The return roller fits fine, no problems there. And once you get this part bored out and it slides together, it'll all go together, and get these trimmed, and then it'll all go together just fine. Once you have it all together, then you have to put the skid across the top, and as you can see, there's a pretty hefty mold seam right there, and more importantly, mold seam here and here where it fits on the top of the main cast part of the bogie assembly. So you want to make sure you get that all cleaned up really well, either with sanding sticks or, you know, scrape it with a knife, just depending on what you prefer. But then for this part here and this part here, and you can probably see that this part is kind of notched. So what I did is I rested that notch on the very edge of this rigid filing emery board sanding stick thing, and I just dragged it across like that to get this and that really smooth, and then it fit on top like it was supposed to. So that's basically hope I had that in frame. I had it like this, fit it on there. The edge of this is resting on the edge of this lip right here. Got it on there and just slid it across, got it all nice and smooth. So with that, I'm going to continue putting the bogies together, and that will finish steps 1 and 2 on the first page, which is also going to finish this portion, this episode of the M Group build. So stay tuned. I'll come back next time with steps 3 and 4, which is on the next page, and see what's going on. Thanks for watching. Questions, comments below. Catch you next time.